Hello and welcome to the Berkcast, the How to Train Dragon podcast. I'm your host, HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And I have no idea why I'm searching those words. Today, we are going to discuss characters again, but to be more precise, underappreciated characters. Characters that we feel either the fans don't give them the love they deserve, or maybe we just feel that the canon didn't develop them as much as we want to. We are going to discuss all of those characters today, and how do we see them as underdeveloped or underappreciated by the people involved with the franchise. So, Wolf,
No, you start first. I need to make
um,
sure my character's name is actually what I think it is, real quick.
you chose a character, but you don't remember its name.
It's been her name, and it's been a while.
So you know it's a girl, but you forgot her name.
No, I know her name. I did know remember her name. I just needed to make sure it was her name. Okay.
You
That
needed to make
probably
sure.
says something too, by the way. But anyways, we'll get into it.
Ladies, he's single. He might not remember your name, but.
That's an assumption that
uh,
I have. I'll definitely forget your name.
mhm. Yeah. On that note, I am single too, and I'll most likely forget your name as well after the first date. But that's another story. Moving on.
Oof.
What is your underappreciated character?
So I'm gonna pick two, mostly
Okay.
because.
That's something as well. Let's just back up the listeners. We can choose more than one. It's an open discussion. We can choose more than one character.
I'm picking two because I think one of them fits in both categories. The other, though, fits only in one category. So that's why I'm picking two. The one that
Okay.
fits in one category is, I'm going to say, Eret. And I don't think he's an underappreciated character, but I do think he's underdeveloped somewhat. I do think there's more you could do with him.
Yeah, I'll agree there. Okay, and the second character.
Is Atali. I will never not love this character, and I think she does fit in both of these categories, or can fit into both of these categories. But I think she definitely goes into the more into underappreciated than underdeveloped.
Okay. Um, in my on my side, one of the characters I think is underappreciated. I'll say equally within the fandom and alongside the canon is Valka.
Okay.
There are probably more, but this is the one that I basically
And you think she's
uh,
underappreciated?
mhm.
Okay.
and also a bit underdeveloped. We'll get to why I think that soon
I could see
enough,
it.
but
Yeah.
mhm. And I'm trying to think if there's something. There's one that I won't say necessarily underdeveloped or underappreciated. I just think like kind of missed potential in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Drago.
That's fair. Yeah.
So we both of us chose to like we could choose more, like again kind of an open discussion. We're not locked to these two characters, but why what do you think Eret, for example, is so underappreciated, and how would you fix this?
I don't think he's underappreciated. I think a lot of people
Underdeveloped, you know what I
appreciate
mean.
Eric because I mean you'll hear. I think Eric definitely has the appreciation of the fans, right? I do think like a lot of fans are willing to use him in fan fiction, have used him in fan fiction, will probably continue to use him in fan fiction because they like him, and that's completely
I
understandable.
will I will never get why people ship him with Merida, but whatever. He's cool.
Yeah, like he definitely. I think he comes into the scene and he fits the scene well, and he works well with a lot of the other characters, right? So I don't think there's anything there that is underappreciated, but I do think there's stuff there that's underdeveloped, right? And I do think we could stand to learn more about him. I think we've gotten a bit. I think the graphic novels helped somewhat in this regard about giving us that bit more, but there's still a lot there that we could potentially learn that we just don't know anything about
Like,
yet.
yeah, because I'll tell you this much. I've read, interviews with Kit Harington, the voice actor, and he used to say that the idea of calling himself Eret, son of Eret, is because he never knew his father. So in his mind, he is his own father, which is why he calls himself Eret, son of Eret. That's really interesting, and I would want to see this elaborated on in some way. I don't remember exactly where it was from, but I recall someone saying something like that. And I know
I
it.
learned something.
Yeah, I know it was Kit Harington in an interview around the time How to Train Dragon 2 was the latest thing. But I can't. I just remember him saying that Eretz and Averes is kind of a thing he came up with because he sees himself as his own father and as the father of his crew. The ones we meet in How to Train Dragon 2. He sees himself as kind of like the Peter Pan to these people.
Okay, that's neat. Something that we don't really get from the movies, I would say. Something that's not readily apparent.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thing. Like because obviously the movies are not about it, but this is something like that we'll probably get to this later. But if there was ever like an Earth spin-off, this could be really interesting.
Yeah, I would agree. That's why I chose the character.
Of course you did. Um, but okay, so anything else like you would do with Eret?
Um, things I would do with him, like, I mean, that kind of gets into the spin-off thing. If we're not doing spin-offs, if it's just a question of is there anything I would do with him in the second or third movies?
Yeah, something like you could change something in those movies.
To be honest, based on just those movies and how they flow and everything like that, no, I don't think there's anything I would do to change up Eret in there. Because I think Eret's already engaging and interesting enough to catch people's interest, right? And I think that is where you lead into a spin-off with this character. I don't think there's anything you can do with him in the movies necessarily that he's mostly in to really draw people's attention and really make this character stand out more, because I don't think he should stand out more than what he already does, right? So I don't think there's anything I would necessarily change or add into the second or third movie. Thinking right offhand, maybe if I had, a lot more time, I could come back and say, this is what I would change actually. But no, as it stands, I don't think there's anything I would change. I would keep him as is and then use that as is interest that people got from the second and third movie and funnel that into a spin-off series or show, movie, or just, graphic novel or what have you, book, whatever, with the focus being on Eret and his past, maybe.
Okay. So I'll go next for this because both of us mentioned two characters, so we'll do this one. I mentioned Valka, and the thing is that Valka is interesting because I think I'll say that she's more underappreciated by fans when it comes to the second film, but more underdeveloped in the case of the Hidden World. Like I can see this played into both categories, and why I think this is in the second movie. I think you also said it at one point in the almost 3 years we've been doing this that
I've
you
said many
weren't the
things.
yeah, but I think you said that you obviously said many things, most of them wrong, but like the
Excuse
example,
you.
yeah. But I recall you saying that you weren't the biggest fan of Valka in the second movie.
No, I was not. I thought that she came off as a bit too perfect, if I'm not mistaken, and I also said that I feel like she wasn't questioned as much as she could or maybe possibly should have been in terms of what she did wrong, right? It definitely felt like she made mistakes, and those mistakes were completely forgiven and completely okay because she bought her son's love back, so that's all right now, right? Like there's an entire discussion you could probably have there, but it was something along those lines, yeah.
And we had that discussion most likely at one
I
point
don't.
because we did do a Valka episode at
We
one
might have.
point.
We might have. I don't know. I don't remember. It's been a while. Go back and watch that episode, and if we didn't, you
You
can
know
come back and
some. You
tell
know
us, and then we
something.
can do another video just for you on that discussion.
You know something, Wolf. I'm willing to bet like this is episode 130 something.
29.
So Valka's episode was exactly 100 episodes ago,
Woo.
if I recall correctly.
We definitely planned this all out just to let you know.
Like a conspiracy theory. Did the Berkcast plan all of this? Of course we did. We planned everything.
We swear.
But yeah. So like you said, a lot of people didn't. But you do have a legit point that she wasn't criticized for stuff that she should have been criticized for. But I think some people just were just against the idea of Hiccup having a mom at all.
Yeah, I remember that as well.
People could just not he wants if they have to meet like a dragon lady or a dragon person at one point, like it shouldn't have been Hiccup's mom. And with that, I disagree. I disagree with this one because when in the first movie it was pretty much a focus that Hiccup is not stoic. He's not. He was never like stoic. He's not going to be like stoic. He is developing to be a better and a different chief than stoic. So I think it was actually kind of obviously there is some sort of screenwriting, kind of a script convenience that he happens to come across the one dragon person that is his mom. Unless you take into account Race to the Edge and all those things, that he met other people in this world. It's not that it's not like this is the first person he meets after the dragons become a part of Berk. So I never really minded that his mother was like a dragon, and for lack of a better term, a dragon apologist and a dragon savior. In this world, and because that does show where his love for dragons and where his curiosity about the dragons come from. How did he let Toothless go in the first movie?
So a lot of people disagree with that statement, especially because it kind of takes away that feeling that Hiccup. It makes, again, it comes back to that. Oh, he was destined to be this way, or he was always going to be this way because of his mom.
It's not necessarily that it was destined to become because of his mom. This is not.
It does feel that way to some people, though, and that's why some people get upset by it, because Valka kind of gives off this idea of, oh, she's like this, so he was always going to be like his mother. It does feel kind of when you look at things that way, and I do get where people are coming from. I disagree. I think Valka's perfectly fine as an addition. I do think that they could have done better with her, but I think overall, like, she's a perfectly fine addition. And I think she can and does add quite a bit to the story and these characters, right?
Yeah. So I don't agree with the idea that it was like destiny. It's just, he took over some elements from his mother.
I disagree with it, but I do get it.
So yeah, that's why I think she was more like the fans were a bit harsh on her. Again, there are criticisms I
one
get.
Of those people.
Yeah, and again, you brought up some criticisms that I get and I kind of agree with, even though maybe that's another that will also kind of allow me to transition, because I think the movie does kind of explain why she did what she did.
Yeah,
and that she does acknowledge that she didn't treat it the best way possible.
Yeah,
and also when from Hiccup and Stoic's point of view, like especially Stoics, when you see the love of your life, the woman you say you don't want, you tell your son you don't want another woman, the woman you love the most is kidnapped in front of your eyes. You missed her by a second. You could have saved her, and for 20 years you believed she was dead, and you sent out search parties, you sent out whatever, and all of a sudden you see her alive and well. I don't. If let's say none of the fight happened and they would just go back to Berk, then yes, I would agree that he would probably need to call her out on on this entire thing. And who knows, maybe Hiccup did off screen.
It's
However,
like I do get it. Like, right, I completely agree. Like, Stoic acting the way he does makes perfect sense. Hiccup acting the way he does is very much something I'm kind of torn on. I don't
because it
disagree
does
with
kind
it,
of
but I
it does
do.
because it does kind of say like when she after she tells him she's his mother, and he does tell her, "You're my mother. Do you understand? Do you understand how insane this sounds? Like I have questions. What were you doing?" And once he sees that she was like this dragon protector, he's like, "Okay, everything's gone. Everything's."
That's my issue with it, right? It does feel like, again, my issue comes with my own personal, I guess you'd say, baggage and past, right? And from my own personal experience, and it just kind of feels like, hey, as a parent, you can disappear for a long time and then immediately come back or show up in your child's life and present them with something they love, and that child's just going to be okay with everything. It's like that's not how the real world works, and I disagree with how you're portraying this potentially
Mhm.
to kids and
Okay.
adults. Again, that's very much a me thing, possibly, though.
Mhm. You have a point, though. I agree. I agree with some of it, but this is how I see Volga is gonna underappreciated by the
Oh, sure.
community in the second film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, smooth transition to the hidden world, where it's not much the community because I think the community kind of warmed up to Volca
Mm-hmm.
after all this time because there was a 5 year gap. I think people just accepted it
Yeah.
and moved on. Now we come to the hidden world, which I have a problem with Valka when it comes to the her role in the film. What do I mean by this? It's not that she's useless. She does have a point in the overall. She guides the riders. She gives them tips. She also helps during battle. She's going to, there's the big scene where they all attack Grimmel's base. She's helping out there, and she does do stuff. She has a point. Like it's not a character that you could just say you could write a movie without her and nothing would have been lost. I disagree with this. She does have a role,
Mm-hmm.
even if even if a minor one.
Yeah.
The My problem in terms of writing is that, with that said, she kind of loses. I don't want to say authority, but she does kind of lose of what made her. She's less of a mom, if you know what I mean. In the second one, say what you want about her disappearing and everything, she acted like a mom the moment Hiccup comes back into her life. Like she wants to guide him. She does guide him. She tells them something that mothers would tell their kids if they're having self-doubt. When doing Stuik's funeral, for example, she tells them that she feared he couldn't make it, but Stuik believed in him, and that she believes in him, and legit, this is how mothers encourage their kids. And then
Yeah.
in Hidden World, it's kind of like she sees Hiccup having doubts, and she knows exactly what's the problem, and it's always like, "Hey, Astrid, go take care of it." Hello, he's your son. You could say something to him.
I could see where you're coming from. I get why they did it that way. It did come off as a bit weird. One could argue that she was being a mother by letting him by instead of coming up and saying what she wanted to say, she was being a mother, and not only that, she was also being a a ruler's mother, right? A chief's mother, because realizing that if she had come up and done, and been a mother and done motherly things, that as a chief, that could hurt his credibility somewhat, potentially.
Yeah, but at the same time, so one and listening to Astrid doesn't lose credibility. I get what you mean. That from getting tips from your mother looks worse than getting tips from your, for intents and purposes, fiance.
Mm-hmm. That's what.
But
That was the remark I was going to make too. Like, mother, fiance, one looks better than the other, arguably.
yeah, but so okay, fair point on this. But then, and we talked about this before, that Hiccup and Volka do have one interesting conversation in the film, and it's it's when she tells them, I tried to hide from the world, and eventually you found me. Which and because Hiccup has the plan of moving the entirety of Berk to the hidden world, and that's where they'll stay. This is their way to hide from the world that now knows all about them. So she tells them, "Listen, keep in mind this is not entirely possible, and if Grimmer wants to find us, he will find us." Then again, we talked about this too, that in the deleted scenes, this was done better.
Yeah.
So the way I would say, I could fix it is that change the scene I just said existed in the final cut, change it with the deleted scene. It could the point could have gone across way better, in my opinion.
I would also argue to add in the scene of seeing Burke on fire, and it's Volka who we're following who sees all that, right? Like, show that scene too, because it just it gives Volka a little bit more agency in a way, right? It makes her do it. It shows us her doing something.
Yes,
that's a part
that
of
too.
that's apart from just being, hey Astrid, go do this thing. Hey Astrid, go do this thing.
Yeah, I agree with this. And then there's one final thing I would have wanted, and the sad thing about this is that we kinda didn't get it. And if you tuned into the show, this was around episode 30, I think. You know that I had this Valka backstory fanfiction I wrote, which say what you want about it. I understand if people don't like it or anything. I'm not claiming this to be canon in some sort of way. Not the intention. I'm just saying that I think Valka is a character that you could do a lot with her past, because we know Stoic was another generation to the Chiefs of Berk and everything. That's all fine and good. But what about Valka? All we know is that her and Stoic fought some berserkers together. We see this in Dragonvine, and that's it. That's all we know. I would actually want to know more about her. Was she born on Berk? Was she not? How did she meet Stoic? I would just want to know this kind of stuff. And again, it doesn't matter in the long run, but if Dragonvine kind of went in that direction, might as well give us a bit more to chew on,
You just want to be hopefully proven right, is what it is.
No, trust. You read this story. If you think I want my brutality to be proven right, then no. And you know something? A review actually called me out on that. They told me I'm not shying away from brutality. So I don't know about you. I want How to Train a Dragon to remain PG for now.
Sure.
Well, so I kind of went all over about Valka. What do you have to say about Atali?
What are we doing? Starting out with pointing out our favorite characters that we think deserve more. No, bleh.
We did this, Wolf. We
Yes,
did this.
I'm reading the wrong one. So you want to know why I think Atalia is underappreciated?
Yeah, the thing we just talked about.
Yes. Give me a sec. I had to go through this entire spiel of listening to you rant on about Valka. God.
Hey, hey, excuse me for trying to make this a podcast,
I'm joking.
Bringing up points.
So, I think it's very obvious the reason why I would say Atalia is underappreciated. The big thing we heard when, I don't know if you remember, but I do remember at least when the Wing Maidens were first introduced and we first got a sign of the Wing Maidens.
Yeah, forget the episode itself when the clip was shown.
Yeah, when the clip was shown, people, I don't want to say lost their shit, but they were definitely upset by it, right?
Dude, there was shit being lost on that day.
I don't think it was that bad, but it definitely, people were upset by it at the very least. They were upset like, it doesn't fit in quote unquote canon. It's not canon. It can't possibly be canon. Dragons can't fly, that, etc., etc. It was mostly the dragons they were upset about, but it kind of just.
If I may interject, just to tell you, as
ahead.
one of the like kind of a reverse Valka here, I was one of those people at first, and the reason I was one of those people is because I just assumed, and a lot of other people assumed that as well at first, and were proven wrong. But when the episode came out, and upon further inspection, that these things weren't they weren't flying. The wings weren't dragons; they were their wings. Like they were some sort of like fairy-like creatures.
It's not even that. People were still upset though, from what I understood and saw, because the dragons were too small to be able to fly this way. Like, you look at the baby dragons in How to Train Your Dragon 2. These dragons can't fly and carry people. Even though the dragons in How to Train Your Dragon 2 did it, you brought that up. The immediate counterpoint was, well, they're bigger, so that doesn't count. I'm like, what? No, come on. They're all babies still. You're being ridiculous to try and prove your point.
Yeah, but they are razor wings. Maybe razor wings could carry.
Again, you're getting into assumptions. You're getting into theory, and anyone could be right and anyone could be wrong when you start doing that.
Yeah, good point.
The point is babies flew in the second movie. What's wrong with baby dragons flying and Race to the Edge? People had a problem with it. That problem was mostly centered around these baby dragons potentially carrying, these, the Wing Maidens, and that kind of just rubbed off onto the Wing Maidens and rubbed off onto Atali, and everyone just despised this group and disliked, at the very least, this character, right? Like, no one cared for it, no one liked it. So I would say she's underappreciated in that regard. Now, what do I think you could do with her to change that? Make the dragons bigger. There you go. No one could complain now, but...
So like, how would you fix a character or make her more developed or something? Make the dragons that pick her up bigger. Okay, sure.
I mean, that was the biggest complaint people had. You get rid of that complaint, I think a lot more people would appreciate the character.
Yeah, but you say that about a mistake that, honestly, like I said, I kind of made that mistake too. And once I
don't feel it's a mistake, though. I feel like that's how people still think. That's how people see that group and that character. They just dislike it. It doesn't fit their version of canon.
Yeah, but again, you say this. Now, forget the clip, okay? Forget everything. Let's talk about the show, Race to the Edge and Atali in Race to the Edge as it was shown. I know there are still people who don't like this, but forget the first impressions here. Let's talk about the show itself. What would you do regarding criticisms not about the Razor Wings? Because people had
really. I don't think there was any criticisms directly aimed at Atali. If there was, I don't remember them right offhand. Do you know of any or remember them?
Looking back, I can't really point something like like how with Valka people say, oh, a mother wouldn't leave her child like this. and then get away scot-free without any consequences,
Yeah.
or something like Eret that doesn't really have much background to him. There's not the one thing I kind of saw people raising an eyebrow at is that it's hinted that they might be cannibals. Oh, was
That
it a
one.
joke?
Yeah. So I guess if you're talking about that, I would make it more clear that that's a joke because that's what it comes off to me is that it's all a joke. So that's what I would try and make that more clear that they're not cannibals, that they don't eat men. But other than that, I don't think there's anything I would change because there is that. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong with this, but I could be misremembering. But I do remember. I do think, if I'm not mistaken, Atali says something like all the wing maidens were banished or abandoned by their tribes, and so they all ended up on that island, and that's kind of where they've been living and helping raise the razor wings and doing their thing ever since they got there, right? And I think that's the thing that stands out to me personally because I think it could be very interesting to follow Atali and her past. But I guess that's a different topic that we'll get into in just a bit. So your
Yeah.
second year. But otherwise,
So
I don't think
with that
there's
said,
enough criticisms that were aimed directly at Atali to really bring up and say, okay, this is how I personally might fix that. If it's the cannibals thing, just make it more clear it's a joke, or just don't even use the joke in the first place. It's that
okay,
simple.
fair enough. With that said, let's talk about our favorite maniac, Drago Bloodfist. Why do I think he's either underappreciated or underdeveloped? Main reason, and we talked about this not too long ago, that when you really think about this, like with all the villains in the franchise, he seems to be the net that kind of connects everything together. Because it's like people he either trades with people or people outright work for him. And so in a sense, if you forget the fact that he was the villain in the second movie and Grimmel was the villain of the third movie, which means you kind of associate Grimmel more with the big finale. Drago honestly did more. Drago has a lot more, I want to say, build up, a lot more things going for him. You know what I mean. So, so with all that said, when you think that we've been basically, if you watch the entire franchise in canon, okay, let's talk canon now, not a release date. Then you have the first movie, which no one hears about them. Then you have the first two seasons of the show and the shorts, again, nothing about them. Then come the entire Dragon Hunters thing in Race to the Edge season 2. That's the point. For all intents and purposes, this is the first time.
Oh no, you're
in the.
Just to be clear, you're going through this canon, not through what we actually.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, like I said, canon.
Okay.
Canon, like timeline wise.
Yeah. Okay.
When we get to the Dragon Hunters, Riker, Vigo, all that good stuff, that's the first time Hiccup and the Riders have come across people that want to capture the dragons for essentially business. This is the first time we've ever come across this thing. And as the time went on, we know that okay, Vigo is just a businessman. He also says he has no plans to really conquer the world. It's just he needs to do what he needs to do to get by. And then there's as the show goes along, there's the entire thing that while they're working together, you can tell that Vigo hunts the dragons for one reason, Krogan does it for one reason, and Johan does it for one reason. And Vigo does drop hints that there's this mysterious contactor from the North that did this business with them. That's your first sign that there's someone bigger controlling all the strings in that fight. That's your first sign. And then when Race to the Edge ends, we find out that Viggo already sacrificed himself. Johan is being frozen. Johan froze thanks to the Bewilder Beast. And then Krogan is taken to his boss, Drago. So again, imagine if you're watching this in chronological order for the first time. This is your first introduction to this big man behind the shadows, walking on the strings. And what's the first thing you see him do? He executes one of the a villain that we've grown to know, a villain that we saw is capable. Like one command, that villain gone, dead, no more. And then in the second movie, we actually get to see what he does. He has an army. He has another hunter that he sends down to hunt dragons. We see how he controls dragons. He basically uses sound like the Bewilder Beast to make them his. So there's this big build-up for a monster. And to be honest, he lives up to that. He is a monster, and kudos to him. He's probably the only villain that actually managed to kill one of the heroes. Telling the Bewilder Beast to take control of Toothless to kill Stuik, the scene we all know.
Nah, that was all Toothless. Toothless is the only one who's managed to
Shut up! And we have all that, and then there's the battle on Berk, and then he disappears. No more. Nothing. Zero, nada. The villain we build up for all this time to go out like this.
You could argue the third film, he still has an influence on the world because it is his armada that's doing things, right? That's his warlords that are still doing things.
Yeah, we said that it is the warlords that eventually summon Grimmel, and that kind of kicks up the entire conflict of the third film.
Yes. Even just looking at his warlords alone, right? Like they have an influence on the world because he brought them all together. So you could say that he still has, like, his death still has an influence on the world, or his disappearance.
Does it though? Because Grimmel himself does say a year since Drago's defeat and no further along with your plan, and they tell him you can thank the young chief of Berk for that. Like Hiccup like takes them down. Even in the raid we see in the Hidden World at the start, this was a pretty sloppy raid, as Astrid puts it. So movies roads, and even in their most pathetic, Hiccup and the gang make a short walk of them. I mean, so it's not like they kind of need Grimmel, honestly.
What I mean is I don't necessarily mean they're doing good work. I just mean Drago is still having an effect on the world through them, because the army still exists. He's the one that created the army, brought it together, brought the warlords together. Sure, they may not be doing a good job of whatever it is they want to be doing, but they are around. They are within this world, and they wouldn't exist or be doing what they're currently doing without Drago originally, right? So he is still having an effect on the world by and large within the third film. Like his actions have created, the world that our heroes currently find themselves in, right?
Yeah, you have a point, but
it's
again,
minor, but it is there. Like he still has an influence.
Okay, something. Let me ask you this.
But
okay?
I do get where you're coming from. He does just disappear.
So let me just put this question on the table.
Mm-hmm.
When Grimmel encounters the warlords, he just throws away Drago in a line.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the acknowledgement that this big master planner gets.
Mm-hmm.
This is so. You think about all the other stuff he's done, all the other like how much he's built up, how much he matters in this world, and it's kind of like nothing. And on the one hand, yeah, I know that there was the entire thing. Valka was supposed to be the main villain of the second film, and then Drago was supposed to come in the third one. Some people even say that after Drago was the villain in the second movie, the Grimmel wasn't supposed to be a thing until much later. I don't know what's exactly true unless Ding the Block comes out and says everything. But as is, I kind of feel like Drago didn't really live up to his potential. In some ways, yes, but in a lot of ways, not really.
You could argue that that line is just a that's how Grimmel views Drago. That's how Grimmel views, excuse me, that's how Grimmel just views Drago, that he is kind of throwaway, that he doesn't view him as that much, right? That he does look down on him in a way. You know, you could argue that, but it's very much an assumption and theory at that point, right? There's no guarantee of that.
Even though it kind of plays to what I'm saying, like this new villain shouldn't he be kind of afraid or respectful of Drago, considering the fact he knows everything he's done supposedly? So
I mean,
why is it just
again,
like
maybe again you could argue that just shows how little Grimmel cares. Like that's how little Grimmel thinks of him, right? Like he's not afraid of him because he has no need to be afraid of him because he couldn't do anything to him. He's not worried about him. You could argue that. There's no guarantee of that. There's no proof of that, but you could argue it in that way, and there's nothing that disproves it. But again, there's nothing that necessarily proves it either.
Yeah, this is one of those things that's basically up for interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we went over all of our characters.
Or anything you would do, with Drago in the third movie potentially to change that, or any lines you'd have Grimmel or the Warlord speak maybe or something.
So the thing is that I try to think about this because you can look at the third movie and say a lot of things like you like it or don't. There are a lot of things you could say. Maybe I would have done this. Maybe I would have done that, and that also applies to How to Train Your Dragon 2 in a sense. Like with every sequel, there will always be the one person who goes, you know something? Maybe I would have done this instead. So that happens with every sequel and every spin-off and everything. The thing, would I have done something different in regards to the third movie as it is now, like keeping Grimmel and the Warlords and everything? To be honest, maybe, I don't know, maybe, because I've heard that there was apparently a scene that was cut, which involved Drago in some sense. And that's not on the Blu-ray, so I can't tell you what it is and how it will matter. But maybe depending on what it is, maybe keep that in. Or moreover, maybe make Grimmel and Drago connect a bit more. I'm not necessarily, because we talked about this when Grimmel was announced, that maybe they are related in blood. I don't think that needs to be the reason, but something, kind of a joke we made. Maybe make them like old friends or roomies or something. That there would be kind of like a more personal motivation to go after Hiccup besides Toothless.
Fair and understandable.
Yeah, and that way I would feel, okay, this guy affected something. This guy still, because like you said about the Warlords, he does still affect something, but the Warlords are kind of idiots when we really.
It doesn't feel like he does. Like it might be there, but it definitely doesn't feel like he had an effect on this world, right? Like I think that's the big thing. Like you can sit back and say he is, but it doesn't feel like he is, and I think that's the big thing.
With all that said, let's moving on. Do you think any of the characters we brought up could hold up, given if it was given its own spin-off of some kind? Now, you don't have to just say this about the characters you brought up. You can also talk about mine.
Okay. In that case, only two of them I think could actively hold their own spin-off if it was, all right, being specific. uh, I think two of them could hold their own spin-off.
While
That Dream no, of
the
all
two
four
others
characters,
couldn't.
of all four
Okay.
characters, I think two. If it was a spin-off that was created by DreamWorks, whether it be a show, a book, a graphic novel, a movie, even whatever you want to call it, whatever it might be, if it was a spin-off created by DreamWorks, I think only two of them you would see get a spin-off, and only two of them could really hold it. Those two
Okay.
being Eret and Volca. If DreamWorks created a spin-off, if it was DreamWorks creating the spin-off, I don't think Drago or Atali could hold it on their own. Now, as far as fan fiction goes, I think you could explore a lot with all four characters in fan fiction, but especially Atali and Drago.
Here's what I think. I was always a big supporter of a Valka spin-off, specifically, something in between the years where she was protecting dragons and saving them and everything. After she was taken from Berk, not necessarily the moment she was taken, or several moments before she finds Hiccup, but somewhere during that time, somewhere during their 20 years of dragon rescuing.
I'll disagree, but finish up first.
Okay, and the one thing I would have said, you talked about this. I would make Eret one of the villains in that show, like because when she meets Hiccup and Toothless and she sees Toothless's prosthetic tail, she asks him, and what is this? The Drago and his hunters did this too. So that means she probably fought Eret at one point, and we do know that it's her and Amlet that blasted Eret's fort. So they most likely ran into each other before Hiccup showed up. Therefore, I can see them like having this rivalry with each other.
So yeah, that could actually be very interesting, and I would actually enjoy watching that and everything. Personally, I would be more interested in seeing Volka's past when she was still on Berk with Stoic, because watching
that could be cool too.
Watching her past of rescuing dragons for the time she was away and everything would be neat. But I think we've already kind of seen that with Hiccup. So I would be looking for something much more unique, potentially, or much more different, that's still based in this world. So seeing this world from the perspective of one, Volca, and two, who is somewhat of a dragon apologist, who's somewhat, at that time wants to protect dragons, wants to try and create peace with the dragons, but doesn't know how, and so still kind of just goes about life in the village, trying to survive against the dragons and survive against the other tribes. And like you getting to see young Stoic as well on top of that. I think all of that would be a lot more unique within this world and would serve to expand it a lot more, right?
Yeah, but the question is, what can you do with this in like I could see this like working as a short or as like
yeah, I don't think it would.
I
think it would be more of a book or a graphic novel. It definitely wouldn't be a movie, or maybe a short. I don't think you could. You might be able to get a show out of it, but it really depends on what you're going for.
but because it will be a really slice of life show and not necessarily something that people will connect with How to Train a Dragon.
Yeah, because
you could argue that Riders of Berk, Defenders of Berk also kind of had that slice of life feeling to it, but there was still action to it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think there would be action to this as well, but it would definitely be a lot more diminished since it's, less action on the back of dragons and more standard kind of Viking stuff action, right? Potentially. Like you're probably getting a bit more of that than you are of, dealing with and working with dragons like you are from actual How to Train Your Dragon. Like this would be more focused on fighting the dragons or trying to not fight the dragons while fighting the dragons or things of that nature, right? Like her dilemmas and stuff like that. Like it'd be interesting, it'd be neat, but it would definitely be very different. So this is definitely something that you would probably see in more of a spin-off book or spin-off graphic novel, things like that.
Yeah.
As for Eret, Again, I think he could hold his own spin-off movie that focuses just on his past hunting dragons.
I agree.
I think
I would have to say
you
that.
could do a movie focused on that, and while it would definitely probably be a bit darker compared to what How to Train Your Dragon originally, like actual How to Train Your Dragon is, right? Since we're no longer befriending the dragons and being nice to the dragons, we're actively hunting the dragons. I still think you could do a movie with that and it'd be a good movie. And just, in general, I think that'd be a good movie that I would be genuinely interested in watching. Now, as for Atali and Thrago, Atali, I've said before, I'll consistently continue to say this. I think exploring her past with being banished from the tribe and potentially, coming to Wing Maiden Island, or, coming to this island and finding these razor whips and being this character who, again, being this character who is banished from their tribe, possibly with others, possibly by herself, coming to this island, finding these razor whips, finding a meaning in life again after being banished from your tribe because you, for some weird or, for some reason, weren't good enough, either because maybe you were female, maybe this tribe was focused on males and females were banished from the tribe for whatever reason, either because they were female or because the tribe needed to, because of hardships or anything. So much stuff you could do there to explore that past of being banished and left for dead out on the open sea and finding this island and finding, reason to continue living, whatever that might be, right? Like, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you could do there. I don't think you'll ever see DreamWorks do something like that, though, and for obvious reasons, right? But fan fiction
One thing I will say,
can.
I don't remember exactly in the shows I ever stated that Atali was the first Wing Maiden.
I don't know if
But
she
it
was
does,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
because you did kind of say like when she was, that she abandoned her island or she was expelled from there or
Banished.
something.
She wasn't. She didn't
Banished.
abandon. She was banished. So she was forced
Yeah.
to leave.
Okay. You see, I don't remember that.
I do remember
when
I could be wrong, but I do think they said something in the show that, or she specifically said something in the show that she was banished from her original tribe. I think.
Okay, but
could be wrong.
so let's say that she was
I'm going
banished
to
for a
Google
second.
real quick. You keep talking.
Okay. Okay, but in case she was banished, and then we don't know necessarily when that happened. So who knows? Maybe she is the founder of the Wing Maidens. Like maybe she did come up with all those traditions. And even if she didn't, that's something I would kind of want to see, seeing how she's the leader of the Wing Maidens, banished or not. I would like to see how this was formed, or maybe how all of the tradition of once a razor whip becomes too big and there's the entire ceremony. How was this conceived? How this entire mythology they live in came to be? I would be interested in like a spin-off about that. Maybe a short, maybe an actual movie. I'm not sure. Something along those lines.
I'm still Googling.
Okay, so while you're still Googling, I'll talk to Drago, and here's all I want. Because that's kind of goes back to the entire wasted potential thing I talked about. We know that he saw his family being taken, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to use the thing that took my family in order to step up and become something greater. It would actually be kind of interesting to see a movie detailing the origins of the villain and how he became kind of like how he became a hero in his own way. I'm not sure if you heard about this, but there are a lot of fans that kind of wanted to like sort of a Voldemort spin-off. So they probably don't want to know because J.K. Rowling is insane. But
wow, being completely blunt with that one. Okay.
Dude, this is like my slogan for the last few months. So
Until she tweets out that you're insane, and then, well, what are you gonna do?
you know something. As opposed to her, I completely accepted the fact that I'm insane, and I
Fair enough.
know I'm insane. So if J.K. Rowling want to tell me I'm insane, come at me, baby. I'm ready. So
Let's go. Let's start beef with one of the most prolific authors in the world. Let's go. Our, who would win? We're gonna lose. But sure, I'm up for this. I'm not.
yeah, see you see what Wolf is. He tries to ignite a fight between me and a well-respected author, and
Well
he talks.
respected is debatable.
Well, was well respected at some point, and he uses the term "we." Like he sends me to the battleground and says, "We fight together," and it's while I'm in the battlefield doing all that work, and he's sitting in the crowd with popcorn, going, "I believe in you,
No, no, no,
HC."
no, 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 no. Let's be fair. The general leads his troops. Yes, sure, he might be standing back behind in the background where it's much safer, but that's because he's smarter. He's the strategist. He tells you where to go and what to do. It's your
Wolf, can
job
I
to
tell
fulfill
you?
that.
Wolf, can I tell you something?
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag you are not my general.
Well, when you lose, don't come crying to me.
Of course I won't, because I have an actual general who I trust way more than I trust you. And no, it's not Rush.
I'm guessing you make the Astra joke and
Oh God, you think no, no. Astrid as my general, no. She would try her best to get rid of me. Most likely, she only has one dog in her life, and that's Hiccup. She doesn't need another one.
Moving on, back on topic.
Yeah, why are we talking about this? Moving on. So before we sidetrack too much, so yeah, I can see like a spin-off for Dragon, not necessarily not a show or something that continuous, but I can see a movie about his past,
I
how he
can't.
came to be.
I
You
personally
can.
just can't. No, I don't think it would work, to be honest. I don't think you could do enough with the. I don't think the character's engaging enough. Personally, maybe you could get by with it. Maybe I'm completely off base, but I don't think you could. I don't think the character could be engaging enough, either in his past or what have you, in a way strong enough to lead an entire movie. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Spin-off material like books or graphic novels, yeah, that could probably work. But his own movie, I would doubt it. I would go into that movie with a lot of doubt that it's going to be good.
Okay, fair point. Now I just want DreamWorks to actually greenlight this, but that will never happen.
Also, I'm back from Atali Googling. I've got nothing. Like, I looked up the wiki, and the wiki says she tells Heather, Astrid, and Roughnut about, the Wingmaiden's past. It says nothing about that past. It just says she tells them about her past. I'm like, well, thanks. That's helpful, wiki. Unless
Yeah.
she genuinely, unless this is the wiki getting across that she doesn't mention it and we have no clue, and I've just made up the whole.
Well,
She was abandoned.
anyone
She was banished. She was banished by her tribe thing in my head, and that's just hand canon at this point. That I've assumed is now canon when it's actually not.
So
I don't know.
People who may have binged Race to the Edge not too long ago and actually know,
Correct
let
me
us
if
know in
I'm
the
wrong.
comments.
Yell at me, and then yell at HC for telling you to yell at me, for letting me tell you to yell at me.
Okay, Wolf, you are starting to lose yourself there, buddy. So let's move on to
Yell
the
at
final
you
category.
for letting me tell our audience to yell at me. It
I
makes
didn't
perfect
tell
sense.
our audience to.
I didn't say you
tell
did. I said you let me tell them to yell at me.
Well, of course, it ends up with you suffering.
That's
would
why
I
they
want...
should yell at you too, though. And that's why I'm telling them to yell at you.
Yeah, but maybe they like me and hate you.
Nah. that silence. That was good. I appreciate that. That was clever. Moving on. Oh, he left. Okay. Well, I guess that's the end of the Berkcast, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I'm here. I just want to see if you'll still laugh once I come back. You didn't. I am very disappointed in you. But we have one more category to go over in this.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me ask you this. With all of our talk that we feel some characters are underappreciated or underdeveloped, or something could have been changed, some could hold spin-offs, some couldn't. Do you think the problem in general might be that we have too many characters overall?
Honestly, no, I don't think so. Like, if I look, going at just the movies, right? We have Stoic, Hiccup, Astrid, Snotlout, Tough and Rough, Fish Legs, Gobber, Eret, Volka, Drago, Grimmel. That's it. Not counting the dragon characters too, just the human characters. And
even well, honestly, the only two dragon characters that actually have character are Toothless and the Light Fury. So.
Well, Toothless, the Light Fury, Stormfly-ish.
Like, yeah, Stormfly do, but you said the movie specifically, and honestly, they are not.
Yeah,
not like, as prominent in the movies.
Everyone else's dragon's kind of a bit more background. Stormfly is the only one that sticks out the most, and that's mostly because of the second and third movie. Cloudjumper as well, to a degree, but focusing on the movie characters, yeah, there's a lot of characters there when you start listing them off by name, but I don't feel like any one particular character overtakes the other too much, where it just feels like it's like, why do you exist, right? I don't think any character... I don't think I could point out any one character and say, okay, this character, yeah, you could completely make them disappear from the movie and we lose nothing. I don't think there's any character that stands out to me as a character you could do that for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree.
Taking into account the show as well, you might be able to say that, and I'm sure some people would say that about some certain characters, but even then I still feel like all the characters kind of serve the purpose they're meant to serve, and none of them stand out as, why do you exist again? Because we don't need you, really? Again, I'm sure some people would still say that about certain characters. I'm sure many people would say that about the Winged Maidens and Atali. I'm biased, though, so I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say those people are wrong. Because they're wrong. Fight me. You're wrong.
Well, with Wolf encouraging the people to fight him, I don't think that it's necessarily a problem. Considering that we talked about the show as well, I think not having too many characters could be a problem to some when you take into account the show as well. But I can kind of get it, because in a show, eventually you do need to add new characters in order to keep things fresh, because the show goes on for longer.
Yeah.
So I in that sense, I don't think that there are too many characters, like too many to choose from in terms of how much can you accept. I get that, but overall, I don't look at any of the characters, even the ones we said couldn't hold their own spin-off, and say, the only character I could tell you that I could live without is Mildew.
You're wrong, but anyways.
Mm-hmm. Of course I'm wrong.
I get where you're coming from. Like, I understand, a lot of people dislike him, and I do get why. But I do think he serves a purpose, and he works in that purpose very well.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you got rid of him, who would you replace him with, right? Or what
not necessarily get rid of him, not necessarily get rid of him, but maybe make him less annoying. To me.
Fair, but What would you replace him with though? If you or what would you change about him? Anything specific, right off the top of your head?
Okay, the more I think about this, maybe just not focus the entire. Oh, we don't accept the dragons as part of us after everything. Maybe just make it a few background characters that
Okay, I see what you're
are
saying.
afraid of dragons.
Don't focus that entire plot line solely on Mildew, but make it more of the village as a whole, right? Like
Yes, exactly.
include more of the village and not just have it solely be Mildew that's inciting
Yeah,
people.
because
I
if
get
it's
that.
one guy, it's like,
It's kind of really,
but
but yeah, I get
yeah.
where you're coming from. I can understand that. That's fair.
Okay, so with all that said, I think we're basically done.
Yeah, sure. I think we've said about all we
So
can.
yeah, don't expect a spin-off from this episode.
Hmm.
But with that said, that's been all for this episode of the Berkcast. We hope you enjoyed. What are your underrated or underdeveloped characters from the How to Train Your Dragon franchise? What would you do to change it? And do you think the franchise just has too many characters? Maybe you can tell us all about that in the comment section below, on our Tumblr where we're known as Berkcast Team, on our Twitter where we are Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and you can find all of us on the How to Train Your Dragon Valhalla Discord server. So with all that said, I was HC.
I've been Wolf, and I guess I eventually need to just buckle down and write that Atali thing so I can get it out of my system, and people probably get over it. Stop being mad at me for bringing her up all the time.
Yay, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye bye.